Hi. I'm going to do something I've never done before, which is to create a video blog. So hopefully it'll be somewhat successful. Please let me know what you think. The topic is how I created my Christmas card. Now, although it sounds rather lame, and may prove to be, it does solve a problem, a very common problem, which is what do you do when not everyone is there? Now, you can put little vignettes in your card, little circles with pictures here and pictures there, or stick them side by side. But what I tend to do is try to tell a story and use images that I have to try and do that. And traditionally, my cards have been a little bit artsy, so this will hopefully be in that same genre. And anyway, this is how I did it. Hopefully, you learned something from it. I use Photoshop. I'm sure that you can use Elements. If you don't know how to use either one or aren't so inclined, it is a service that I offer, so you can also go that route as well. So anyway, this is how I did it. So this is the final image, and I always like to show this at the beginning. It's somewhat stylized, but this is the realized concept. Now, the way I work, I really didn't know what I wanted. I mean, I knew that I wanted the generalized concept of her sitting on a stack of boxes, me holding the stack of boxes. But a lot of the details you kind of figure out as you go along. So I'm going to show you at a very high level how I created this and try to deconstruct it. Now, the first image I started with was actually the one of her. So, and this was it. Now I used the free transform tool to size it appropriately. But this is basically the image. And then what I did was cut her out, but I cut her out using a layer mask, which I always recommend doing. It preserves all the pixels. If you make any mistakes, or to refine the edge so that you get a nice smooth edge, it just seems to work so much better than actually, cutting out those pixels. So once you apply the mask, you get this. Now, after I identified this and kind of had the general concept in mind, I went to the studio and shot a picture of me. And that's this image right here. With some tweaks. Now, you'll notice I took this, and then as the basis, I use this image here to size her. Let me remove her. So you start here. I knew I wanted to use her, so I masked her out and then sized her so that she looked right sitting on top of that box. One of the details that I wanted to provide shadows, and shadows always to me make the image. So I provided a shadow layer here. Basically, all I did was duplicate this layer, used levels to darken it, applied a Gaussian blur, and then masked off everything except where the shadow would fall on the box. And the light is actually coming in this direction. Notice this is her lit side, this is her dark side. I tried to replicate that lighting here, lit side, dark side. And because this is the lit side, that would mean that the shadow would be coming on the opposite side. So I placed the shadow here, and that was a detail. And then the rest really in this was just stylization. Excuse me, you'll notice that the lighting is slightly different between her and me. And so what I did was use some hue saturation layers to try to even that out. This one's pretty subtle. And I used one on her as well. And the reason it's so subtle is because, well, no, it just is. Now, I did use color effects, which is an add-on filter from Nick. There's a lot of ways that you can do this, but I always feel that when you're compositing two images, that there needs to be a layer on top that unifies the two. A lot of people use photo filters, which I think work great, the photo filter layer within Photoshop. I use Nick, and I believe I used the Glamour Glow as well as a colorization layer, a sepia layer, to which I really reduced the opacity. And that's this layer right here. So you can see the coloration, the tonality is now a little more in common, and there's a little bit of stylization more toward the brown end of the spectrum because of that layer. Now, this is what I came up with, and I didn't like it. I mean, I liked it, but somehow the white background didn't really seem appropriate. Oh, by the way, I did add, let me take the text off. I did add this layer here, which is these stars. I just used a star brush that I had and used shape dynamics to replicate this. It started out green, and then I added a hue saturation layer and just tweaked the color to something I actually like better. That's always a good recommendation. You add this layer, you can change the color to anything you like. So you start out with something and then go with this. So anyway, I came up with this as a final image and didn't really like it. So the next step was to provide a background. And I came up with this. I had this image here from several years ago of our tree with some gifts in front of it. And I decided to use that as a background. Now, I did, again, you have to kind of blend those three images together. So in this case, first of all, I wanted to decrease the depth of field. And I did that by applying a Gaussian blur. So I duplicated the layer and then used a layer mask to reveal the blur, except in the foreground here. So it looks like it's using a gradient here on the mask. It looks like depth of field is responsible for this blurriness. Then the next thing I did was added the picture of myself and my daughter in the boxes. And again, I used a layer mask. Now this layer mask was very easy. I just selected the color white, cleaned up the areas that were close to white. So I used a color selection facility to do that. Now, these don't look quite the same. So what I did was I used, again, color effects to kind of blend the two using exactly the same two filters to do that. What I also did, you notice this just affects me. So for the background, I created a composite and moved it down below and then applied those same color effects filters to kind of unify the colorations of the two different images. And then this was from my robotic vacuum cleaner, and I didn't really want to see that. And then again, I applied a hue saturation layer, again, to try to further unify it. And then once I had done that, I again created a stamp visible layer and then used color effects to finally unify it. This time I went with a cooler color. I went with a blue, but using the same two basic filters, a glamour glow, which diffuses things a little bit, and then a bluish cast layer and reduce the opacity of it to get to the final image like this. And then to create the card, I did do one final thing, which was to create a stylized edge. And for that I used, let me see, where is it? It's this one. I used On1's, I have their suite, so I used the perfect frame one with an acid burn and applied that. And that's basically how I got the card. And again, I think some of it was intrusive here, so I masked it out. But that's basically what I did. And rather than just having a card with two images on it, I tried to tell a story and came up with this. I hope you found it enjoyable. Please let me know what you think.